Hi, I'm Steve Ramsey, principal at Westridge Middle School, and we're going to go over some of the proposed plans that we've been talking about under the master plan for Eanes ISD. So this is the plot, aerial plot of what goes on at Westridge, and kind of give you an update on some areas that we'll be referring to as I go to the internal structures. One thing to notice about Westridge, while it does look like it has lots of different green areas when it comes to impervious coverage, one thing we found out right away is most of the land that is accessible to be built on is already built on. In fact, to make any kind of structural improvements, we would have to sacrifice some of the areas that already exist under impervious coverage rules. So the major areas that we felt like we definitely needed to work on is our fine arts facility. To kind of give you a perspective on how large our fine arts program is at Westridge, percentage-wise for the number of kids, it's actually larger than Westlake High School, and also give you further perspective why we have about 100 fewer kids than Hill Country. We actually have more kids involved with our fine arts. So this is one area that we're really going to zero on. That was our number one priority, was making sure our kids were serviced as much as possible by facilities and by teachers in the appropriate area. And then also there's going to be a couple courtyards that we're going to talk about. This is going to be the outside courtyard by the science hallway, which we'll talk about, gaining some room right there, and also an inside courtyard between our two upper halls. Out here we have some outdoor learning opportunities that have been used in the past, but it was more of a distance past than recent, and some of the last 10 to 15 years they were used. This you can actually see is a kind of an old type classroom that was outside. You can actually see it from different crossways that you go to get to Barton Creek Elementary. And this is one that was really created to be an outdoor learning space. The only problem with this one, it has a steep slope, so we're looking at how we could maybe improve that to have kids access and teachers up and down a little bit more easily. We also have the outside amphitheater that we'll come back and talk about, which you can barely see. And then also securing and allowing kids access from the 200 hallways to the 300 hallway. And you'll see that internally in just a second. We have a solution, hopefully, that would allow our kids to stay inside as they go between classes. So this is the proposed utilization plan for Westridge and kind of the internal structures. And the first area that we'll talk about, once again, was our number one priority, was expanding and increasing the size of our fine arts facilities. You can tell from the schematics here that we're actually going to extend orchestra and band to have either more storage space or more instructional space. And really the choir, we're going to really double from the original boundaries of the outside of the building to have 2 full choir rooms and actually added some storage. And that we definitely felt like everybody we talked to at Westridge was our number one need to increase the size of fine arts for sure. That was a priority. Next thing that we definitely looked at doing, which represents my number 2, are making some flex space for students that are more open, more into 21st century learning, more of a flex space for staff to share offices as we've moved to the professional learning communities to actually provide them a collaborative structure there, and also different kind of breakout rooms represented by the G's for kids. So that would be on the first floor and then the second floor at Westridge. Along with that, we talked about the outside courtyard. One thing we were looking at doing is getting our kids and teachers access to be able to go in the courtyard. As it exists right now, to get to that courtyard, you actually would have to go through the mechanical room to go out there. And we have 5 major oak trees out there. We have lots of vegetation. We actually have some animals that live in there. And so we really want to get our folks to be able to access nature and provide them the ability to do that, as opposed to maybe walking to some of the further ones. That accessibility might increase the use of that space. Another area that we were looking at was over here in the science courtyard, and also capturing the ability to do some outdoor learning or just create another classroom represented by flex space or different group room for the students, and to maybe give some shade to this courtyard. We allow our students not only in the cafeteria, our outside courtyard, in the hallway, and sometimes in the front, but we also allow them to eat in the back courtyard. We really wanted to make sure that has as much shade as possible, so it got utilized as much as possible and good community feel. Along with it, one thing we were awful excited about, as we showed you on the outside diagram, to leave from the 200 hallways to get to the science hallway, you actually have to go outside, because this does not exist right now. One proposed thing we'd really like to do is to be able to somehow create a bridge or a hallway that would connect to 200 and 300 hallways, so kids don't have to go up and down stairs or down and upstairs to get to class. And we feel like we could do that and really be advantageous for our students to provide them, you know, safety inside, but also just kind of a convenience thing for them as well. Other stuff we're going to do is we have the outdoor amphitheater. This is a great space. It's built in. Our kids gravitate towards that anytime there's any events outside. but it's not covered and it's almost entirely in the shade throughout, in the sun throughout the day. So cover that with some shade and definitely give more kids accessibility when it comes to moving outside. A major movement we've also had is in our tech room. It used to be an old real industrial shop class, and in that room we're going to have RMS TV, robotics, tech systems, and so we felt like we could really upgrade that to represent all three programs because it is a great space, but we may not be utilizing it as well just based upon functionality. Also, one last thing was, if we remember over looking at the fields, is Westridge is kind of isolated compared to a lot of other schools in district, and one thing we thought about at Westridge, and this is coming from a lot of the parents and students, is to make sure that maybe we could put up some sort of lights, restrooms, different kind of facilities out there so we could host some games, whether it's football or soccer, maybe use it more for community ed just because it is on the western end of the district, to have accessibility and really use that field that was approved during the last bond period. So those are definitely the largest and greatest things we have going on at Westridge.